Moonbeams, welcome to my channel. Welcome back. This is the Empowered Mystic Moon School, and I am your astrologer and sound healing practitioner. My name is Donna, and I'm so very happy to have you listening in here today. Today is Monday, March 25th, 2024, and today I am changing up the podcast a little bit, because we are experiencing a big lunar phenomenon today. It is the Libra Lunar Eclipse, and I really want to spend the whole of this podcast discussing the lunar eclipse, the energies of Libra, where this is happening, what a lunar eclipse even means for us, and some of the aspects that are also impacting us with this lunation. And so thank you so much for tuning in, for listening, for sharing your energy with me, and I just want to thank you again for being here. Of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and share this podcast with someone who you feel might appreciate it and feel supported and open to learning about these topics. I will be back here on Thursday offering you a sound bath to help regulate your nervous system and to really bring you back to your center. So that'll be on Thursday. So yeah, we're going to get right into it. If you like the content, please like this video, share with your friends, subscribe, and if you have anything whatsoever to share, please leave it in the comments, because that really helps the video find other people as well here on YouTube. Okay, so now we are going to get into it. So this is today, we have actually here in Eastern Standard Time, we have already passed over the exact eclipse point when the sun and the moon were both at 5 degrees in the sky. The moon is in Libra and the sun is in Aries. And so essentially a lunar eclipse is a new moon. Is a full moon, but the reason why it is an eclipse is because the moon is very close to the south node point. And when it is a solar eclipse, which we will have, which many of you are aware of in 2 weeks on April 8th, that is when the moon is very close to the north node. And we'll get to that in 2 weeks. I'll do a special podcast just on that solar eclipse. But for today, we are focusing on the lunar eclipse, which is a full moon, yes. But the moon is very close in the sky to what's called the south node, which is a point in the sky. And we're going to unpack today what this means for us energetically, okay? And we're going to talk about the Libra energies, because that's where the moon is. That's where the south node is for definitely the rest of this year and even into 2025 a little bit as well. So let's talk about this. Okay, so whenever we are having a full moon, we are always tapping into the energy of release, right? Because the full moon is a culmination point in the cycle, in the moon cycle. It is a graduation point. It is a culmination where we are at the end of a cycle. And so that's already at play here because, as I said earlier, a lunar eclipse is a full moon. So we have this idea, right, of release, of culmination. But full moons are also about illumination, right? Because she is at her brightest point in the sky. And so things are revealed to us, right? The truth is revealed. A knowing, an understanding, seeing something that we haven't been able to see before. when the moon is at her brightest point, we become illuminated as well. And so this is even more pronounced, these energies of release, culmination, and illumination. This is even more pronounced at the lunar eclipse, because let's kind of talk about what energetically an eclipse means for us. So when we think about something being eclipsed, right, we're talking about something being obscured, something going into a shadow, being covered up. But then, because it is dynamic and there is movement, whatever was hidden from view then becomes fully illuminated in this process. And so eclipses are energetically very dynamic lunations. There is movement here, there is change, and there is transformation. And so taking the properties of a full moon and something being released and culminated and also illuminated, that is happening in even bigger ways for us when it is a lunar eclipse. So even bigger things are being illuminated for us that we are ready to release, that we are ready to let go of, be done with, leave in the past. Because ultimately, that is what the South Node, which is always at play at a lunar eclipse, is asking us to do. The South Node is asking us, what are we really, truly ready at a soul level? What are we ready to leave behind, to release, to let go of? And this is from our soul's perspective, because frankly, our ego may not be ready. Our ego may not be ready to let go of something, release it, move on, right? Our ego may still want to hold on to the thing, the person, the situation, the energy, the thought, the belief, right? The dynamic, whatever it is. And of course, I always say, these energies with the moon, they can play out on a really internal level, where it's very personal. It's really introspective. It's all about what you're feeling and what you're thinking and what you're processing emotionally. It could really be playing out in a deeply internal way for the lunar eclipse, as opposed to, let's say, in 2 weeks when we're having a solar eclipse, that could be much more pushed out. That could be showing up much more in our lives in a tangible way. And in 2 weeks, I'll talk about that in more depth. But for now, it could really be this internal shift that you are feeling, that you are knowing. You're coming to this realization, right? Something is illuminated for you, and you can't unsee it in your life, in your internal world. You can't unfeel it, right? It's like you turn a corner, and then there's no going back. Okay. Now, of course, that will then, in many cases, push out into our lives, right? So, for example, if what you're feeling, sensing, knowing is that you are really just done showing up in a certain way, in a certain dynamic with someone, right? You're like, you know what? I just don't want to show up like this anymore. I'm just done with this. This is not who I am anymore. And I'm done with it. I'm releasing it, and I'm letting that part of myself go. And I'm just not going to show up like that anymore. And so when you have that internal realization and you turn the corner on that and you're like, yep, nope, I'm not going back to that. Then of course that can then push out into how you literally show up in a dynamic, in a relationship, right? So it starts within. The realization, the illumination, the epiphany, whatever it is, it starts within us, and then we push it out into our everyday lives and our behaviors and our dynamics. And so then it becomes really a big shift in our external world, right? Because when something changes within us, then there's like a shift in our vibration, right? And so we're just not showing up in that old way that we used to. Now, that's one way it could play out. Really, truly, there are infinite numbers of ways that this can play out for each of us. It could be a realization that you are in a situation or you are in a relationship, which I'm going to get into more in a minute because that's what Libra is all about, relationships, where you're just not in alignment with this person anymore, or this job, right? Or this group. Because we have relationships with everything in our lives, not just that one person, right? Where maybe you have a romantic relationship with. Certainly it can play out in that way, absolutely. But I'm going to get into that a little bit in just a moment in a little bit more depth. But it could certainly play out that way, where you just know, like, I'm done with this relationship. It doesn't resonate for me anymore. I was in this relationship when I was a different version of me, and now I'm a new version. And so if this person is not growing and expanding with me, or if we're just not on the same page, right, we're just not in alignment, then it's time to let it go. It's time to release it. And so it could literally be something like that on a one-on-one relationship. So that leads me into the Libra energies. So Libra rules the 7th house in our charts. And the 7th house is really the first house in the whole wheel that is about the other in our lives. And what do I mean by that? So when we're looking at the wheel, the astrological wheel, you know, the first house is the self. And that's where our ascendant is, right? That's our rising sign. And as we grow and mature, we begin to embody our rising or ascendant sign more and more. The way I read charts is through whole sign house system. And so whatever your ascendant is also your entire first house. And so if we look right across the sky, right across the chart from our first house and our ascendant, our sense of self and who we are, well, across the sky and across the chart is what's called the descendant, the other. And the 7th house embodies those one-on-one relationships. And Libra rules this house. And so we are talking about one-on-one relationships that are really, truly here to mirror back to us, right? Our shadows and our beautiful illuminations, depending on what those relationships are here to teach us in this life. And so when we're talking about Libra, the way I teach always is that every sign is a spectrum of energies. And so there's absolutely no judgment. There's no good and no bad. Yes, there are the shadow aspects and also what I call the illuminations, the higher vibrational aspects that we are all hopefully moving into in any given sign. But the shadow aspects have a tremendously important role to us. And so I would never judge them as negative or bad. It is when we shine the light and we illuminate our shadows that we can begin to heal them. And so that is truly why we're here, right? To grow, expand, and heal. That's why we're here in this precious human light. And so when we look at Libra, which is where this full moon lunar eclipse is today, we're going to dive into this whole spectrum of energies around Libra, and hopefully something will resonate for you around either the shadows and or the illuminations, and what you may be ready to release now and what you're ready to step into. I'd also like to say that, we are experiencing the peak of this energy today, but we're in what's called eclipse season, because eclipses come in twos. We have the lunar full moon eclipse, and then we have the solar new moon eclipse. And so they always come in pairs, the full moons and the new moons, and the eclipses are no different. And so the energy really has been building, I would say, at least for the last couple of few weeks. And we will continue to feel these energies, see these energies playing out over the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, we will come upon the super powerful new moon solar eclipse on April 8th. And then those energies are going to play out for anywhere from a few weeks to really up to 6 months or more, depending on how it is aspected in the sky. And so we are in an eclipse season. So what I'm going to talk about here today, you may have already been feeling it. You may have already been really aware of how these Libra energies have been showing up in your own personal life, around your one-to-one relationships, around your relationship dynamics, and what you are really, truly just done with in this area of your life. So I just want to acknowledge that it's not like, okay, bam, today is the eclipse, so it's all going to happen today. Certainly, you may have an epiphany today. You may have a turning point today. You may have a new realization, a new motivation, or a new energy around how you're going to let go, release, or move forward. But it could have been building for you in the last couple of weeks. Okay. So, Libra is the sign of relationships, certainly. And in the chart, the 7th house is really the first house where it becomes about the other and not just about ourselves and our own personal development, and how the shift then goes to the other, because now they are an important part in mirroring back to us, right, where we're at in our own journey. Now, it's not to say that there aren't other houses in 1 to 6 that don't help us on that path. They certainly do, like our family, our siblings, etc. But the 7th house is a bit of a turning point also in the chart. And so I'd like to read you something I wrote about Libra and how I kind of personify the signs. And I do this in Moon School. I do this for every sign, for every lunation when I teach in Moon School every month. And I just want to share with you this that I wrote about Libra. Libra is the fair and just king. And before I go on, I just want to share that Libra is a masculine sign. And so when I write these personifications, I write them in the gender sign, the gender of the sign. And so it's not to say that Libra is male, but it is masculine energy. And we all have it in our chart. So whether we're a female or however we identify, we still all have Libra in the chart, okay? All right. So Libra is the fair and just king. He will always advocate and defend the underdog and offer justice for those who have been slighted. Nothing riles and angers Libra more than injustice. Compassion and kindness are innate, with Venus ruled Libra, and he cannot abide others being exclusionary, cruel, or unkind in any way. This king wears a crown of swords representing clarity of mind and can see with a balanced and decisive objectivity. Emotions do not enter into decision-making, only careful weighing of each side, seeking to balance the scales and create a win-win situation for all. The Libra king will avoid conflict as his ruler, Venus, wants love, not war. Libra appreciates beauty and aesthetics and is often physically beautiful to most. Libra will see beauty where others miss it. The Libra king is happiest with a partner, in love and in all other pursuits, and works best in collaboration. Now, when I write these, I'm writing in the sign's highest expressions. And then what I do is I go into the shadow aspects. And so the shadow aspects of Libra are being indecisive, having a chaotic energy and finding themselves in chaotic situations, being unbalanced, being superficial or materialistic, being unclear or confused, avoidant, having a tendency to be people-pleasing and over-giving to seek approval. And of course, this is on deep subconscious level, as all the shadows are. Being codependent and possibly even vengeful. Now, of course, all of these shadow aspects are operating on a deep subconscious level, coming from a wounded place. And so this is not someone consciously choosing to be avoidant necessarily, right? This is not someone consciously choosing to overgive to the other at your own expense, because there's no self-awareness around shadow, right? That's the whole point of it. It's most powerful when it's in the dark, when we don't have our consciousness shining a light on the shadows. So part of me talking about the shadow aspects of a sign is to shine the light, is to take away some of its power, so that we can all become self-aware and say, oh wow, I'm kind of overgiving. I'm coming from that people-pleasing place right now, and I need to just stop, take a breath, and ask myself, where is this really coming from, right? Where is this coming from? Where did this originate from? And why am I playing it out here in this dynamic right now? And that's when the healing begins, right? Okay, so the South Node in Libra for this lunation is asking us, if we are in dynamics, if we are in relationships or situations that are really playing out these shadow aspects for us, then guess what? It's time to let them go. It is time to move on and to leave them behind, because we cannot grow and expand if we are staying tethered and anchored to our shadows and in relationship with those who we operate in the shadows, right? Once we have the awareness around that, we have to make a choice. Are we going to continue to show up in this way or not? And ultimately, we can never change the other, right? We can only change ourselves. So now, this does not mean that, every relationship that, we see these tendencies, that we just have to throw it out the window, right? Like, there's that expression, like, do we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Not necessarily. That's for each and every one of us to determine for ourselves where we're at. We can certainly decide, well, I'm not showing up this way anymore in this dynamic. That we absolutely have control over. And this eclipse is asking us, Have you been doing that already? And there's no change in the relationship? Well, then this might be the next step for you, right? For some of us, this is the first step. Having the realization and saying, I need to show up differently and see what happens. For some of us, we've been showing up differently and nothing is changing. It is not affecting change within the other person and how they're showing up. It is not changing the dynamic. And so if you're feeling stagnant and stuck, if you're feeling anchored in this lower vibration of these shadow energies in this relationship, in this situation, then maybe you're at the next step where you're like, you know what, I need a break from this. Or you could be finally where you're like, you know what, I've done all the things. I've taken all the steps. I feel confident that I've healed enough of this within myself, and this relationship or this situation is just no longer serving me. Now, I want to point out that, you know, not everything is black and white. And so we don't have to demonize the other, right, to make space for ourselves to move on. In fact, that is a really polarizing way for us to cope, right? And that's a different trauma response. So what I would say in this situation, you know, Libra is ruled by Venus, the planet of earthly love and compassion and beauty and grace. And so what I would say to all of us who are finding ourselves in this situation, and look, maybe it is an inner dynamic within yourself that you're just done with. It still applies, because don't shame yourself, right? Don't have regret and guilt around the fact that you showed up in a certain way for so long. Bring the Venus energies that Libra innately carries of love and kindness and compassion to yourself and to the other, whatever the other may be. Maybe the other is an older version of yourself. And so you can do both. You can be kind and compassionate to the other person who is showing up in a shadow energy in your dynamic, and you can also move on, right? You can say, I release this relationship with compassion and grace, and I wish you nothing but the best, but I am done, right? And you can also do that internally with yourself. If what you are done with at this lunation is some older version of yourself, or some belief system, or some behavior, you don't need to demonize that version of yourself and have guilt and shame and regret around it. In fact, that will only push it into the shadow even deeper. Instead, have compassion for that version of you. Have kindness for, you could only know what you knew at that time, right? And really let go of that version of you, move on from that version of you with grace and compassion, and say, okay, that was me then, and I know better now. I think it was Maya Angelou who had this beautiful quote. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but basically, like, the energy around what she said was, you know, it's okay if you didn't know better at the time, but once you do know better, then you need to do better, right? And so, of course, there is an accountability piece here, 100%. But we don't need to guilt and shame ourselves in the process, because that is only giving more power to those fearful, shadowy energies. And that's really just going to impede our growth. And that's not why we're here. So I just want to reiterate what some of the illuminations are for Libra. And that is because, you know, Libra is an air sign, and that is of the mind. Libra has a beautiful ability to be objective and balanced, fair and just in its highest expressions, right? And so Libra can, in its highest expressions, put aside the emotions and have a certain healthy detachment and objectively look at something and say, okay, logically, I know this is done. And so I'm ready to move on, right? I'm ready to see this from an objective viewpoint without getting all caught up in the emotional charge. And so some more of the illuminations of Libra are, as I mentioned earlier, that Libra advocates. Now, in the shadow, Libra will advocate for the other at its own expense. Libra will advocate for everyone else except themselves when it's playing out some of those shadows. But when Libra is in its highest expressions, in its most healthy, secure expressions, Libra knows how to advocate for himself. Libra will approach conflict from a win-win perspective, not avoid conflict, not be passive-aggressive about it, but look at it head on and say, okay, how can we find the solution here where everybody's going to feel seen, where everyone is going to come out with a win, right? Libra also appreciates beauty that goes way deeper than the surface level. And so that is where that Venus-ruled energy of beauty comes in. And we're not just talking about the symmetry of someone's face, right? The color of someone's eyes, etc. We're talking about the energy of beauty. Because beauty can be found everywhere and in everything if we seek it, right? If we value it. And Libra has a special perception and absolutely values beauty in all forms. Libra will seek one-on-one relationships, partnerships, and collaborations. And in the highest expressions, Libra is seeking that and attracting that from their most secure sense of self, right? When Libra is in their highest expressions, in their highest energies, but then they're going to call in like energies. And so those partnerships and those collaborations are really going to be beautiful, right? And they're going to have an energy of reciprocity, right? Where there's an equal give and take. And I don't mean that in like a tit for tat way, right? I mean that in there's this beautiful sort of flow when Libra and the other know how to ebb and flow with one another. When one of the partners needs more, and so they give. And when the Libra needs more, and so is able to receive from the other. So, you know, this is really the whole spectrum of energies that we are playing with at this lunation. And it's really going to be playing out over the next 2 weeks, maybe the next week and a half, before we start really feeling those Aries energies coming alive within us as well. But I think that, you know, it's become abundantly clear to us those relationships in our lives that are healthy and secure, and those that are not. Those that are balanced and reciprocal, that are mutually supportive, that bring out the best in us, and those that do not. Some of the questions you may ask yourself at this lunation are, do I overgive? What is my relationship to conflict? How can I strengthen my relationship with myself? because ultimately that is the place where all of our relationships begin, with our relationship to ourselves. And so that is at the core of what is happening here at this full moon today and this eclipse energy. Now I want to talk a little bit more about why the eclipse. Why is this so significant? It's significant enough when we have a lunation in a sign. That's why I do the work I do, is to help us to understand the energies, to really sharpen our self-awareness and move with more awareness and conscious choosing on our path towards growth and expansion. But when we're talking about eclipses, there is a whole other layer that is tied to destiny and fate. Now, this issue might be a trigger point for some people listening who may or may not believe in destiny or fate. And what I would pose here is that this life that we are living is a combination. It is a one-pot meal, and it is filled with many different ingredients. Free will is definitely one of them. Conscious choosing. Free will is very much tied to our level of consciousness, right? Because so often when we are operating from an unconscious place, when we are allowing our shadow patterns to run our life, well, how much free will is really being used here? And so free will is directly correlated to your level of consciousness and your level of self-awareness. But that's not all that is at play. There are times where destiny is going to show up, and fated experiences and situations and moments. And so I offer you not the polarity of this or that, but again, a spectrum. That there are many things at play in this experience we call life. It's never just one thing, and that really, truly, there is divine orchestration happening in every moment that we are here in this life. There are more pronounced times when these become apparent to us, and the eclipses are those times. Now, when we are talking about the south node eclipses, the full moons, the lunar eclipses, we are talking about what we are ready to move on from, that is helping us, supporting us to stay on our destined path that our soul agreed to before incarnating. Now, I know I'm sharing a lot of ideas here that you may never have heard before. Maybe you have you're totally on the same page as me, and this is your understanding as well. But the south node and really the north node, either one, is going to either be a gentle breeze at your back if you are already doing the inner work, if you already have a level of self-awareness, that you are actively working on your shadow self and aspects, that you are actively healing, and that you feel that you are living already your purpose, and that you are already on your path. Then the eclipses will be a gentle breeze at your back, or perhaps extending a hand to gently pull you forward. However, the eclipses can also be a really rough and tumble push. I am actually getting right now the vision of a body check in hockey where you will be pushed off your trajectory in a very forceful way. And so eclipses can show up that way if you are holding on to something, someone, some dynamic, some belief, some way of being that is keeping you from moving forward on your path. The eclipse points will body check you in really forceful ways, revealing truths, making situations so uncomfortable that you have no choice but to feel the impact of them. It can play out that way as well. And I have experienced both. I have experienced both ways where I have had body checks from the eclipses and they were quite emotionally painful, where I had to see the truth of a situation, where I was holding on way too long and it was really keeping me stuck in a certain portion of my path and I needed to move forward. And then I've also had times where I was really aligned on my path. And so the eclipses were super gentle and even magical. There were beautiful synchronicities and signs that were showing up, really validating for me that, yeah, Donna, you're on your path and we're gonna show you more abundance in this area because you're exactly where you need to be. Just let's keep going. Let's keep going. We're going to show you that we're supporting you in this way. And so more things would show up that were helping me to continue doing what I was doing. More ease, more abundance, more situations and experiences to help me continue playing out what I needed to play out on my path. So it can really show up in vastly different ways for each of us. What I think I really want you to know is that if this eclipse or this eclipse season is a body check for you, please know that it's not to make you suffer. It's to help you get on the path. It's to help you realign to what your soul agreed to in this life. And if you can just open up to that perspective, even if it is painful in the moment, even if what truth you are seeing or what you are feeling or what you are realizing is emotionally painful for you, if you can also hold the perspective that you know it's also for your own good, right? It's also for your own good. It will help you to move through that emotional pain a lot quicker because you know that ultimately the universe is always supporting you, always loving you, and always trying to guide you on your destined path to becoming your most expansive self, your true, authentic self, not keeping you stuck in a lower vibration, in a relationship, in a job, in a situation, in whatever it may be that is not helping you to grow, because that is why we are here. So if we can come, if we're getting that body check, right? If we're feeling that, sorry, my phone keeps dinging, and literally I have do not disturb on and airplane mode, so go figure. But you know, Mercury already is in its shadow, so there you go. Just a little side note about the technology, right? So sorry about that if you're hearing the ding ding. But anyway, back to my point. Just know that if this eclipse season is giving you a bit of a body check, It's for your highest and best, and it is realigning you to where you're meant to go next. Just try to think of that. Just try to remember that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the aspects that are happening with this eclipse. And the first one is Pluto. So I'm going to just pull up my chart here. And Pluto is actually really beautifully supporting us right now at this full moon lunar eclipse today. A lot of times when we talk about Pluto, it can feel ominous, or it can feel scary, because we say, right, that Pluto is the destroyer, Pluto is the transformer, Pluto is the truth revealer. But again, it's not to make things hard and rough for us. It's really to help us to evolve, to help us go through some personal revolution. And yes, sometimes that can be painful, just like the body check I was talking about a few minutes ago. But, you know, in this lunation, at this eclipse, Pluto is actually in a very supportive aspect to this lunation. And so what that really brings up is not powerlessness, but being empowered, right? Revolution and transformation from an empowered place. So when Pluto is aspecting in a supportive way, we can tap into the higher expressions of Pluto. And so we don't have to fear that transformation. We can feel empowered and step into our power, or possibly take our power back from a situation at this lunation. Pluto is supporting us in doing that. And it's all for our transformation into our next level, stepping up into that next level of who we are meant to be. The other aspect that I would like to talk about is that the moon is also across the sky from Chiron. And while it is right now not an exact opposition in terms of the degree points, the energy is still there. And so some astrologers look at oppositions as kind of like a pressure point, or showing us what we really don't want to see. And certainly it can play out like that for some. But, you know, Chiron is the wounded healer, right? And so this lunation could be really feeling super duper sensitive to us. We could feel our old wounds being triggered, kind of opened up a little bit, if you will. But if you've been working on these things, my guess is that you're also going to be able to see how much you've actually healed within yourself. This could be reflected back to you, right? That's what oftentimes an opposition in the sky can do, is be a mirror to us and show us something. And so if you have experienced within the last couple of weeks, or maybe it's coming up today or this week, where an old dynamic resurfaces, because honestly, Mercury is also in its shadow for retrograde, so things from the past can be coming up. And Mercury is across from this moon as well. And so if these things are coming into your mind, if these things from the past are literally showing up in your life, it's giving you the opportunity to see how much you've healed around this issue and how you're different now. You're more healed. You are more healed than wounded. And if this lunation is a bit of a body check and you are feeling super raw and vulnerable, that the wounds are really hurting, then I want you to know that you're flushing it out, and it's going to be cathartic, and it's going to be a doorway to more healing for you moving forward. So either way, we're being shown that perhaps we're never truly fully healed, that there are always aspects to ourselves that we are healing, right? That there's some degree of wounding still there. That's okay. But when we learn how to do the inner work, and we have the coping skills and have the self-awareness and the expanded consciousness to be able to lift us up out of the emotional pain for a moment, to see what this is teaching us, what we can learn from it, where's the wisdom here for us, then we are healing more and more each time, in each iteration of the surfacing of that wound. So this is a big day, it's a big week, and I would ask that you really take good care of you, right? Well, let's take the focus off the other for a moment and come back to center. Come back to yourself. Show yourself the love, the kindness, the compassion. To be fair to yourself. And do the things that help you to feel centered. Whether that's a walk in nature, or going for a massage, or eating a healthy meal, spending time with friends, taking a bubble bath, whatever it is, journaling, reading a good book, resting and taking naps, like whatever you need, give to yourself, right? Whatever you need to receive now, give it to yourself. And that is how I would like to close this podcast today. You can check out all of my offerings in astrology, chart readings, looking at your children's charts, moon journeys, all on my website, which will be below. It's empoweredmy.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Donna Empowered Mystic for more content. And please leave a comment. I would love to know if anything resonated for you here in this video. And I'm wishing you so much healing and love. See you soon under the moon. Bye-bye for now.